Force tired.
The Force is what gives the Jedi his power.
Why is the Force connecting us?
I am a Jedi. Always two there are.
We're a dyad in the Force.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Force Diet Podcast, a Star Wars show covering the latest and greatest from the core worlds to the outer rim. If Star Wars is your space, we are your place. We are honored that you've joined us. After a brief hiatus, we are back to talk all things Acolyte. Now that we are through the first half plus one of the show, it would seem fair to say that based on social media anyways, this may be the most polarizing Star Wars content since The Last Jedi. This episode, we're going to take a look at the series so far, talk about the characters, story choices, and perhaps a theory or two on where we think things are going. After tonight's episode, it could be very interesting. If you're new to the show, thanks for swinging by, and if you're a returning listener, welcome back. If during the episode you find yourself enjoying what you hear, be sure to follow or subscribe to the show. If you could drop a review or rating, it's quick, easy, and free to do. I'm your host, Obi Sean, and joining me to adjudicate all things Acolyte is my co-host with the most, Jedi John. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing just fine.
Just fine?
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. It's been too long. Had a lot of stuff happen personally, but yeah, just it's time to get back in the saddle and start enjoying some stuff. For sure.
We've had Mother's Day, Father's Day, golf trip, volleyball tournament for you, and as you said, a host of other things in real life that have certainly been more important, and so it's good.
IRL just getting in the way.
Indeed. So it's good to get back behind the microphone and talk a little Star Wars, a little space wizards and laser swords, which we've gotten a lot of so far in the Acolyte. Yeah, so let's see. It's Tuesday night. We both just watched episode 5, right?
Yep.
And so it's gonna. I originally had the agenda set up to kind of go through episodes 1 through 4 briefly and that's just thrown out the window now. We are going to morph. We're going to call an audible and just kind of turn it into a general Acolyte discussion. Touching, of course, on different episodes at different points, some of the more controversial things. And speaking of controversy, I think we have to talk briefly about kind of the state. This is, the state of the Star Wars fandom. We talked a little bit before we started recording about some of the things that are going on social media. And it's kind of gotten out of hand. Not kind of. It has gotten out of hand. Star Wars fans have gone after one another in a way that is unacceptable. And I don't...
unsavory.
I don't get why we are so mean to each other.
Well, you do know that. You know why.
Well, why is that, John?
There's red lightsabers, and there's blue lightsabers, and there's yellow lightsabers. And none of them like each other for whatever reason.
The thing about it is, right, and we're going to talk about it tonight, right? There are definitely things about this particular series that are interesting, strange perhaps, or definitely out of left field.
A little polarizing.
Definitely polarizing, but it's definitely being taken too far on both ends, if you will. If you were to divide this into sides, and I'm going to put air quotes around that, right? Both sides, it's too far. It's gone too far. There's no place for that. The things that are being said, the things that are being said to each other, it's uncalled for. And again, we can disagree on what Star Wars content we like or don't like. Like, if you hate the sequels, if you hate everything that Disney has ever made, that's totally fine. You can hate it. It's your thing to hate. And vice versa, if you love everything that Disney has ever made. Awesome. Love it. Be you. Love it. But do not, under any circumstance, go after one another in a way that is violent or disparaging or any of those sorts of things because of the things that you like or do not like. That is just
I mean, the issue
unacceptable.
always goes back to the internet allows people to do and say things without any repercussion. So they just say what they want to. If they were face to face with some of these individuals in real life, they probably wouldn't say most of the stuff they've said. Or maybe they would, but that just shows their character, which I think what you do on the internet probably shows more of your true character than what you do in real life. So it's interesting.
Yeah, so wanted to kind of talk about that briefly before we jumped into the deeper conversation, just because there is a lot of that going around right now, especially in the last week or so, and we are wholeheartedly against anyone, regardless of your view on Star Wars, going after anyone else, Star Wars fan or otherwise, in a violent or disrespectful or just mean, evil way. So stop.
Love each other.
Be nice to other people. You don't have to like what they like. You don't have to agree with what they say, but just geez, please.
It was even better on the internet. You can hit the scroll button. Just scroll down, keep it moving. You don't have to stop to comment. You could just literally block them and be done.
Move along. Be the stormtrooper and just move along.
Yes. Move along.
All right. So we're going to move along. We've talked about that. We're going to move along. We're going to talk Acolyte, right? So we are now 5 episodes in. And I guess before we talk about particular topics, so episodes 1 and 2, right? So the double drop. Let's not get into like the episode as like a reviewy type thing, right? But the first episodes drop. And what were your first thoughts after episode 1 and 2? So that was Lost and Found was episodes 1 and 2.
I think the biggest thing for me was even though I knew the Jedi were not going to be all successful the entire time, I just didn't want the one person I was probably most interested in learning about during the series to die in the first scene. So I think
Yep.
Yeah, having Endara die like she did, it was just like, well, I was curious about her, but I guess I'm not anymore. So it just kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. But we do need that. I mean, that's just a personal, like, I wanted to know more about them. Like, I was excited to see them, and probably mostly because it was Carrie Moss versus, I mean, I love the Matrix and everything else. So like, seeing her in one of my favorite in my favorite franchise, it was a no-brainer for me, and then called waste. So
yeah, it definitely seemed.
But yeah,
I was gonna say it seemed not bait and switchy, but with her, kind of having her be not necessarily front and center, but you're like, hey, this person could be a decent chunk of, and it's not been that. So, or it wasn't that. So I was definitely shocked by that.
But everything else, like, it seemed to move slow. The dialogue dragged for me personally. Some of the acting's a little rigid, but I don't really expect when I log into Star Wars anything that we're gonna get like Emmy award-winning acting. So
except Andor was peak performance.
That's fair. Andor is the exception to that rule. But yeah, like I said though, I don't log in and expect it. It was a great surprise, and casted extremely well. But any other live action Star Wars show has not been like, acting has blown me away. Same with the original movies. I mean, it wasn't like it was we'll just say they weren't their peak talent years for some of the actors who went on to do a whole lot of different things. Anyway, I don't know. I think I was unhappy with how it was written, but again, that's more of a personal opinion. Like, I was unhappy with how it flowed because they could have kept some of it more of a mystery instead of laying it right in. Like, oh, they're like, all of a sudden, like when Osha was on the ship, I was just like, oh yeah, it's not her. She has a twin.
Right.
Like,
right.
It was like an immediate. I'm like, oh yeah, she's got a twin. Like something's, because she would save herself right now. So she has a twin. No one's watching her. She has a twin. So just giving us too many details too quickly, and it could have been a little bit more of a mystery. But at the same time, it's after tonight's episode started moving along. So, and last week's episode started moving along.
Yeah, the last two episodes have been certainly more up tempo, if not maybe slightly disjointed. But episode 1 and 2, with them killing 2 Jedi in 2 different ways, right? It was interesting because the scene at the beginning of episode 1 was the extended scene that we got at the end of Phantom Menace, except it stopped, obviously, right before May kills Indara. Excuse me. Which, by the way, I know we're 12 minutes into this. There are spoiler alerts for tonight's episode, so presumably you watched the first 4 episodes, so we're going to talk freely about that, and you should kind of already know that. But if you're listening to this and you haven't watched episode 5 if you haven't watched episode 5 yet, there it is. Just keep that in mind. We're probably going to talk about that. We're definitely going to talk about that here in a little bit. So, but yeah, having Indara killed and then Torben killed, and the way that Torben kills himself was an interesting writing choice, and I'm incredibly curious as to what he meant by we thought we were doing the right thing. So, and I think we're going to get that here. I hope we get that over the next 3 episodes. But yeah, 1 and 2, it was interesting that they were a double drop, because I don't feel like you needed to have them both, whereas other times that they do a double drop, they almost you almost have to have, or like when we got the first 3 episodes of the Bad Batch, like you needed all 3 to connect the story, otherwise it would have felt really weird. Like I feel like kind of like they did this week and last week, you could have had them separate. But I mean, on the surface it wasn't a bad introduction, and it introduced us to a ton of the characters, right?
Yeah, we got a lot.
Of the characters so far, well, we'll get to that, I guess, when we talk about episode 5. But then, so after episode 1 and 2, like I was like, okay, this is gonna be cool. I actually thought May and Osha were Bond twins, similar to Tarek and Surette from the comics, which they still could be. I don't know exactly how Tarek and Surette were created. But yeah, it was an interesting kind of setup. And then episode 3 happens. And to say it was polarizing or interesting would be an understatement, right? So we get a flashback, right? And to Brent Dock and where May and Osha are from. And we see this event unfurl or unfoil with the Jedi and the witches of this coven, and Ish goes down, and it's Bad News Bears. So talk to me about, because we haven't talked about this, so I'm really, really interested actually to hear what you think about this.
Yeah, for everyone out there, like Sean and I have not spoke a lot of Star Wars. We've just had a lot of other things going on, so Star Wars has taken a little bit of a back seat in most of our communication. So this is first time we're hearing each other thoughts on a lot of this. So yeah.
So talk to me about episode 3. We get the reveal that Osha and May were created
by using the thread.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And yeah, so it again, I don't know why it was as polarizing as it was, but people did not care. Many people did not care for it. So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was tough because previously, knowledge base wise, Anakin was the chosen one because he was created through the Force. So now we have a coven of witches that has created children by using essentially the Force. They might call it something different, which is not I didn't have a problem. Like, a lot of people had a problem with them calling it. I'm like, I don't care what they call it. Like, they
Mhm.
had a different set of beliefs. It's just like a different religion. That's all it is in the Star Wars galaxy, so to speak. So I didn't mind that. Um, it was interesting with the way that they were so against the Jedi, and obviously part of it's protecting their kids and children because they know they are enhanced. We'll say so. But I guess by law, the Jedi at this time were allowed to test anyone.
That was very interesting, and
Yeah.
like, I mean, Soul says, because I went through and I was doing a whole bunch of research, writing notes and stuff like that, and Soul says the Jedi do not take children, you know, and it's like, but you do, and
They
then
do. Yeah, they do.
and then Indara says you cannot deny that Jedi have the right. The right. Who gave them the right to test potential Padawans? And then she's like, "Oh, with your permission, of course." So
Yeah, it was a very interesting look at it because, you know, for us, we've always seen the Jedi be the good. And in some of these cases, it's almost like they're a little tyrannical, a little bit, as far as what they believe and how it should be followed. So, pretty interesting. And obviously, part of this is to make the Jedi look not great. And that's the reason why we have things like an acolyte wandering around, because the Jedi are not all good, so to speak. And yeah, very interested to get the rest of the story around the Coven. I'm guessing we're going to get that same footage from a different point of view in one of the next couple episodes, especially being that, well, I'll hold for it, but like after the events of episode 5, I believe that we're going to get some more insight based on what happened at the end of the episode. So thinking we're going to get some flashback probably next episode if I had to guess. Being that they went back on in episode 3, so this is episode 6. I'm just assuming that we're gonna create a circle, a pattern, so we're gonna close the loops with flashbacks as we get through these 3 episode. I wouldn't call them arcs together, but
so that effect of, I guess, showing one person's point of view, right? So I know Keith. Pardon me. I know Keith had mentioned something about Rashomon, which I was not familiar with, and so I actually went and did some research on that. And
yeah, Rochambeau.
Yeah,
Rochambeau.
Rochambeau took all my gold. Y'all remember that old meme? Right, but you know, the director Leslie Headland confirmed that was a core sort of reference or point of reference in how the story was going to be told. So definitely getting things from a certain point of view. And actually, in episode 1. When Soul is talking to the younglings, he says, "Your eyes can deceive you. You must not trust them." And I feel like he was talking to the younglings as much as he was talking to the audience because of, you know, the things that we expect to see, or what we are seeing is not actually what's happening. And I think it has a lot to do with this use of multiple points of view telling the same story. And so back to, you know, the disdain for the Jedi, with, you know, Coral calling them deranged monks. There is evidence, or there's a lot of, at least with the High Republic comics, having the Jedi be viewed in a manner that is certainly negative, especially from those who also use the Force for various purposes. You know, there is a group called the Path of the Open Hand, who actually created the Leveler, which for those of you who haven't read the comics or the books, the Leveler is a creature who basically feeds on Force users. And the Path believe that nobody should be using the Force, especially the Jedi. They believe that their use of the Force was dangerous and everything like that. And so effectively the Leveler would turn people into husks by absorbing the Force and their Force energy and everything like that. It's pretty gnarly, especially when you read it in the books and you see it in the comics. It's pretty intense. And so, and their leader was the Mother. So I think there's a similarity in the Coven, this particular offshoot perhaps being like a splinter group or what's left of that group, because the path is introduced, I don't know, 200 years ish before what we're seeing here. And so yeah, so going back to your point about, you know, different usage or different words to describe the Force, you know, that was happening for hundreds of years before that, right? Different groups were using that, so that definitely didn't catch me off guard or bother me at all. But yeah, the symbolism of the Jedi being arrogant in many ways, you know, whether that's through using mind tricks or mind touch to get people to tell them what they want, or in this case, feeling like they have the right to test children. You know, but I think we definitely see, I think it's primarily Osha's point of view this episode. I thought maybe it could be Soul's, but it's probably just Osha's. And so I imagine the coin flip, the flip side of that will be May's point of view. And then the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. And we get an inkling of that in episode 5, right? But yeah, the idea that the witches created them through the Force, that's not something, again, that is reserved for one individual. I get that Anakin was born of the Force, or at least from a correction in the Force, or at least that's the theory. I don't think that's ever been confirmed. I always thought that old Uncle Palpy created him, right? But nevertheless, I feel like with episode 4, I think that they are two halves of the whole, right? They say as much. They're the yin and yang, and we see that symbolism in episode 5 with Osha dressed fully in white and May dressed fully in black. So they are the yin and yang, presumably, of the thread. They are the balance. So I don't know. I didn't dislike episode 3 as much as I think a lot of people did. It didn't surprise me as much as a lot of people, or as it may have surprised a lot of people as far as different aspects of it. Definitely wasn't my favorite. It was definitely very, like, I don't know if boring's the right word, but I know they were kind of building backstory, or at least a perceived backstory, but it was definitely kind of off pace-wise or pacing-wise.
Yeah. What did I say?
Oh, did you send? Oh, you probably did send a text on this. One thing, while you're looking that up, one thing I was thinking of, which was shattered this evening, was the possibility that Coral could have been the evil Darth Grin, or Smilo-Ren, as I've heard people call the individual, just because her being a Zabrak, she would have the ability, or she would have a perceived ability to harness dark magics, presumably from Night Sisters, to where she could potentially have that skill set. But that was.
I know. I did read that. That was a popular thought, that when we got to reveal it would be their mother. I'm like, nah, don't like it. Don't like it.
Well, I definitely thought the actual reveal was way too obvious for it to be, but
I told you, I know, pat yourself on the back, we got it right, probably. So I know I got it right, but
way to go.
But yeah, the
did you find what you said about the episode?
Yeah, I guess I was not as rough on it as I thought I was in the text. I'm actually kind of proud of myself.
Keith hated it.
Not being so rough.
I think Keith hated it.
Yeah, he was not happy with it. I think my biggest thing was, and this, it's gonna catch a little flack right here, but it just didn't seem original. Like, it seemed like we've seen this story before. So like it, I think I said, I don't know how many different ripoffs they can put in one show, but they are crushing it currently. And I was still kind of on the fence on it since the first 2 episodes. I'm like, this is just so obvious. Everything they've done so far is obvious, and so it's just rolling right in. And I'm just like, it's really obvious in that shot of the coven that they did not die in a fire. So
Oh yeah.
Something else happened.
Mm-hmm.
So some of that stuff is just like, and I understand that the technique is to show the different point of views, and I enjoy films that do that. TV shows, I'd rather get it. I'd rather get it so I had more, but that's part of their mystery that they're playing off of, and they don't want to show it all to you right away. It reminds me a lot of the Green Arrow from the like the old WB series Arrow. They would have certain flashbacks, and you only get pieces at a time, and then until you got to the end of the season, you wouldn't get like the reveal, but you'd be building the whole time. But we're not getting it every episode. We're not getting pieces to, like, I guess, munch on. It's just you got one full episode of it, and we're probably going to get a whole nother full episode of it. And the pacing of that episode is incredibly poor for my liking.
The one thing, through 3 episodes, right? We have been introduced to all of the primary characters, from the mothers to May and Osha to all the Jedi and stuff like that. And I felt like at the end of episode 3, I was hoping to get, like, Soul is the only one that, like, I feel like there was any sort of not only development but like attachment to, and perhaps that was for a reason that just occurred. But you're building out this story where presumably May and Osha are meant to be the focus, if you will, or at least that's perhaps the perception or what's meant to be perceived. And I don't know, like, and maybe the mystery thing is supposed to be the whole point of it, and I'm just not getting it yet, and that's totally possible. But I feel like I should have more buy-in. Like, I want to know what happened. Like, so don't get me wrong about that. Like, I want to know the story, but I almost want to know it more for like, what the heck is Soul hiding? What is what was killing Torb? Like, literally, eventually killing Torben. He took the Barash vow, which is the epitome of, like, the silent treatment, the vow of silence for a Jedi, right? Like, something really, really terrible happened, and I want to
messed him up.
And I want to know that, not so much for this part of the story, but for, like, I don't know, this. And so at the end of episode 3, you're like, all right, so what am I going for, right? And so we get to episode 4. Is there, actually, before we do that, is there anything else you want to touch on with episode 3? No. Okay.
I'm good. It was easily my least favorite episode so far. So
we pivot to episode 4. We're on Kofar with Kalnaka, right? And that was where I actually noticed that, because he had all them scrawls on his hut wall or whatever, right? So clearly he's, like, traumatized from whatever he saw too, because he's gone to live on his own, but he's got drawings of that cosmic sort of loop, if you will, right? But that was the first time that I noticed the dots that made it look like the yin yang. I was like, oh, interesting. But anyways, so this was episode 4 was another point of moderate contention because of the cameo we got, and I'm just like, can we not be so angry about everything that comes on screen, right? But we get a Jedi detachment sent to Kofar to help Kalnaka, or to find Kalnaka, because they know that May's going to find him, or wants to go find him. It's May and Chimere, which Chimere, right? He's that squirrely sort of oafish, like, individual who's helping May. He makes the poison for May, and yet he somehow possesses, like, crazy martial arts skills in a manner to dodge a sneak attack. And I know a lot of people thought that he was, Smilo-Ren and stuff like that. But there's a meeting in the Jedi Temple where they talk about what could be happening, and is it Sith? Is it no? Maybe actually, but they never said that, right? They never said Sith. They're like, maybe it's a splinter order, and Ki-Adi Mundi's there.
He showed up. I think his forehead wasn't as big
It
yet.
was not as tall or lumpy, and he was not concerned about the droid attack on the Wookiees yet, which is okay. You know, that'll come. But people got all, and I was wondering when I watched it the first time, I was like, oh, is that Kiari-Mundi? And I didn't stick around for the credits. And so somebody was like, oh yeah, it was. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, but then wait. Because now it makes me wonder after watching episode 5, how does, like, what, anyways. So.
More questions. Yep. More questions. Yep.
Way more questions, right? So anyways.
Questions are good.
Questions are good.
Questions are good.
So anyways, so they decided to send a detachment, right, to Kofar, and they got the most adorable little badger guy to be their guide, Basil. And
Basil.
And at the same time, May and Chimera are there, right? And she more or less, once she finds out Osha's alive, which I know she found out in episode 2, but she basically is like, well, wait, hold on. My sister's alive. I don't need to do this anymore. Because there's clearly been a deal made with the Master to do something, right? What that something was or is, maybe we'll find out. I don't know. But she decides it's not worth it. She strings him up and she runs off. And she's tracked to Kalnaka's hut. And turns out Kalnaka has already been visited by a friend.
Dun, dun, dun.
And I am so peeved that we did not get to see that fight.
See him fight. Yeah.
Like, and apparently it was written, it was, I don't know if it was shot, but I guess it was cut because of budget reasons. And I'm like, you've got like $150 million. You can't show me a Wookiee Jedi fighting in a lightsaber duel. Come on, man.
You figure it out.
So that was disappointing. But then the very end was like epic. Like the way that I'm going to keep calling him Smilo-Ren, floats majestically down behind Osha. And just, it was like that for the first time, I think, in any Star Wars film or otherwise, I feel like there was an actual sense of fear or terror created by a dark side user, right? Like, I was never, not that I was afraid of it, but like, I don't feel like there was ever fear garnered by Palpatine. It was just raw strength, power and cunning and everything like that. Vader was just like, just pure power, right? Maul and thinking of the Sith, Dooku, Ventress, like none of them were like scary or like they didn't give you that sense of fear in the moment. And I was like, oh, that was shot. I thought that was shot so well. And so, he flicks, just hand out flicks Osha. Awesome. And then Force just obliterates the Jedi and he cuts to credits, right? So
every time I see Osha, I just think back to Ahsoka with Sabine and her training and getting told, you are by far the worst Padawan I've ever had. Like, well, what? Like, I don't know how long she's been out of the program here, but it seems like she didn't have much skill to start with.
Well, and, she tells Jackie actually when they're walking that she's starting to sense things again, like she's starting to feel things. And that was something that I actually put on Twitter. Not that anybody reads that, but about one thing I don't get is how, and I realized after rewatching it that Soul does pick up on it eventually, but none of the other Jedi sense a dark side presence. However, May and Osha almost sense it, not like immediately, but May knows that he's there before the sky ever turns dark, right? And same thing when they were in episode 2, when they were on that planet. How does nobody sense May in the Jedi Temple? Like, yeah, she has dark energy, right? I don't get it.
The biggest thing there is it just shows their arrogance. Like,
it has to be.
No one would dare to come confront us, so they don't search for those feelings ever because they just didn't have to worry. Like in their mind, they didn't have to worry.
But that's the thing. So in the High Republic stories, in the comics, they can sense the Nihil. They can sense the Drengir. They can sense the Leveler, although they don't know what's actually causing that. But they can sense a darkness. They can sense a cloudedness. It's like in 100 years, they completely forgot how to sense anything. And it was one of those things where I don't get it, because, the Nihil were just inherently evil. The Drengir presence, they could be felt through the Force. The Nihil could be felt through the Force. Again, like I said, the Leveler could be felt through the Force. Yet this Sith, I'm gonna put air quotes around Sith because we don't hear that, right? Isn't picked up. They're not sensed. And I don't understand how there are 8 Jedi there and only Sol is the one able to sense it. Now, I did also postulate that perhaps it was a presence he had felt before from a previous encounter, which we kind of maybe get that in episode 5, but it still boggles my mind that unless there was some sort of cloaking with a dark side magic, or I said Sith sorcery or Sith magic, something like that, to mask it. Because and we'll talk about this in episode 5, nobody's picking up on it, and I didn't get that. So, but I will say that episode 4, at least the ending, was my favorite part so far. Up to that point,
I got excited. Then it cut to black, and I'm like, oh,
cliffhanger.
I at least got excited to see. I think that was a difference this week for me. Was I was excited to tune in. And I know that sounds bad because I love Star Wars. Everything. Even if it's a bad episode of Book of Boba Fett, I was still excited the next week to watch what was going to be ruined that week. But versus in this show, I wasn't excited to tune into 4. I'm just well, I'm watching it. So here I am.
Well, especially coming off 3, because you're probably it's got to get better.
Yeah, it was my least favorite episode so far, and
right.
We're 3 episodes in, and I'm like, this has to get better. But yeah, I just wasn't excited coming out of 3, but out of 4, it at least gave me we're gonna get some action at least, so it can't be all bad.
Yeah, and going back to the whole Ki-Adi-Mundi controversy about his age and how Disney was retconning things, right? That was just dumb. I'm not really going to cover it a whole lot, but suffice to say, canon has no birthday for Ki-Adi-Mundi, so everyone knows that at this point. Yeah, go figure. So, going back to your thing real quick before we jump into 5 about the excitement and the yearning to see things. I feel like that's the thing that this episode, or that the show, has kind of lacked so far. And it's unfortunate just because, so it's a new time period. It's characters that nobody knows. Even those of us who are huge fans of the High Republic, you don't actually have to know anything about the High Republic to watch this show. And so there's no buy-in from either hardcore or even moderate core High Republic fans to buy in, because there's no connection, right? Even the opening credits completely forget the fact that the Nihil and the Drengir even existed. I what did it say? I wrote this down so I could remember it. And it says, 100 years before the rise of the Empire, it is a time of peace. The Jedi Order and the Galactic Republic have prospered for centuries without war. Huh? Did they?
For centuries.
Did they? Centuries. Yeah, 100 years earlier,
Listen,
you were
nobody
getting
on this show read the comics, okay, Sean? They missed it. Or books.
The Nihil are, in my opinion, one of the Jedi's greatest adversaries ever because of their simplicity and stuff.
Listen.
They forgot the Leveler? I'm just... I couldn't
Sean,
believe that. I couldn't believe
if I have one of my biggest misses so far is anybody from this show on their press tours. If they could just stop talking, it would be better for everyone.
I was actually thinking that tonight before we started recording about, for as bad as the writer's strike was and everything like that, it did prohibit press tours, which may or may not have helped the initial reception for this show, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but like the things that were said leading into the show were not well received. And I mean, we didn't even
I
really
would
talk
say
about the
they
audience bombing.
automatically made it a polarizing show by some of
100%.
the statements that were made. Like, you just can't say certain things. And if it was the opposite thing said, there would be an uproar as equal also. Like, that's just it. Like, some of the stuff that you do whatever you want with it. Hey, you made the show. I don't really care. But guess what? Nobody really cares. Just make a good Star Wars show. That's all we want. Like, that's all anyone can say. Like, we just want a good Star Wars show. I don't care about anyone's agenda. Put it in there. Don't put it in there. I don't care. Just give me a good quality show that doesn't crap on things that are already established. And if you listen to the presses, they were crapping on things that were established, or they just legitimately did not know, as in they have never seen Star Wars outside of what they did on the show.
Well,
Yord comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Anakin blowing up the Death Star thing did not help things.
Did not help anybody.
Did not help. But again, like, so again,
He's about it.
He's about what?
Never mind. I'm not going to say anything mean. I'm not going to say anything mean.
Oh. I was gonna say, but yeah. So the High Republic fans coming into this, we were super stoked because, like, oh, High Republic, and then you've got your, I'm not gonna say normal Star Wars fans, but like Star Wars fans who aren't familiar with the time period at all, right? And none of it none of it connects, right? It is completely standalone on its own, new characters and everything. And if you want that to be successful, and I'm not gonna say that the Acolyte can't be successful, but if you want it to be successful, you got to have characters that people buy into, and I think Soul is one of them, right? But if the main points of the main content, or excuse me, the main characters that I think you're trying to get people into, like with May and Osha, like I haven't felt that connection yet. And so, it goes back to talking real quick about the press tour and the audience scores, right? The audience scores are atrocious, but I also think that people are intentionally going and review bombing.
Attacking to attack.
I saw or watched Star Wars Meg's video today, and she pointed out that through 4 episodes, there were 25,000 registered reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, which is the most for any Star Wars live action show. The Book of Boba Fett, The Mandalorian, through 3 seasons, has 17,500. So it's like 30% more reviews through only 4 episodes, which is clearly deliberate. Now, there are going to be some that genuinely don't like it, but
yeah, it's getting bombed. It's getting bombed pretty bad. Like I was telling somebody the other day, I was not overly impressed with Book of Boba Fett. I think we discussed that at length on this show, and the worst show for Book of Boba Fett, like episode wise, is like 1.5 better on IMDb than the best show or best episode of Acolyte so far. Now that might change because I think this episode probably will, episode 5 will probably pique some people's interest a little bit.
It hasn't yet. Let's just say it's. I haven't looked at the review or at the ratings yet, so
I haven't looked at. Well, I haven't looked at the. I haven't looked at the one today, obviously, but.
Let's just say it's only slightly better than episode 3 right now.
It's just getting bombed. It's getting bombed. I mean, that's not fair. This episode was way better than episode 3.
Yes.
I will hang my hat on that. Like,
yes. There were things that I did not necessarily like, which I'll talk about.
I didn't
but
like or care for some of the. We're going to get into.
We're going to get to it right now. But like, I mean, looking at the number of reviews on IMDb, I've never seen, like, there's 19,000 reviews for episode 1, 16,000 for episode 2, 18,000 episode 3. There were 9,000 for last week's. Like, the horde, and not the Yord horde, mind you. The horde is out in force to, cut this off at the knees, or stab it in the chest, right? So the end of episode 4 set up really well for. Or really excitingly for episode 5, and yeah, we watched it 2 hours ago. So we get the duel, we get the fight. Smilo-Ren versus 7, I think, Jedi. And I mean, it's like I was watching the scene with Palpatine, and in you know, when he dismantles everyone in the council, or in the Chancellor's chambers. I'm like, you're telling me that 8 Jedi, 7 Jedi, whatever it was, are unable, whether through the Force or through sheer skill, to defeat this individual. Like, you had a Jedi kebab, like, which I'm gonna say that was pretty cool, but like,
it was cool, but it was embarrassing.
It was not great. Like, it was bad. And so, like, as quickly as it had started, it was effectively over. And I was like, well, that was disappointing. Just like when Palpatine annihilated everyone until he got to Mace Windu. It was like the High Republic version of Mace Windu versus Palpatine. But you cannot honestly tell me this individual is as strong as Palpatine, right? But that's what it ended up being. It was Sol and eventually Jackie versus who we eventually find out to be Chimere. Yay! It was Chimere all along.
Even May was like, why are you here? Oh, I just know you need my help.
Like, I thought it was so obvious that it could not possibly be him, and I was yeah, I guess I was wrong.
No, as soon as our Jedi friends didn't pass him in the hillside on the way to the hut, so to speak, I'm like, well, he's 100% him.
Right.
Like, I found him. I've got him right here.
So you got Jack Sol facing Chimere. I'm gonna call him Chimere now. Now that we know who he is, and then you had Jackie facing off against May, which was interesting. But I mean, aside from getting Kelnaka's saber, which did come in handy, albeit briefly, I didn't understand the point of that, other than to kind of bridge the gap between fight scenes. And then at the end we got a twin switcheroo. Well, actually, we got what I thought was kind of an interesting emotional moment between May and Osha, and we get kind of an insight into May's recollection of what occurred, because she tells Osha that she's been brainwashed, which actually would not surprise me, because the Jedi were awfully good at doing that sort of thing, indoctrinating, their initiates, or their younglings, Padawans into different things. So it would not surprise me if that was the case, if Sol found a way to kind of shield her, right? But we learned from Chimere that there is definitely a dark past to Sol, which I really want. I actually thought Sol was gonna eat it. When he had him, just like Mace had Palpatine. And then Osha is like, Sol! Just like Anakin was like, no, he must stand trial. And you're just like, can you not do the exact same thing that you've already done?
Remember when I said that nothing's original? Like, it's one large ripoff of certain scenes from not just Star Wars, but other like franchises like Marvel, and like, it's been yeah, that's where I'm at too.
It's disappointing. Anyways, some of the what?
Thank goodness I don't have an 8-year-old kid that's watching this show with me right now. Because normally I'm all for this. Like, one of my favorite scenes in all Star Wars currently is when Mando has a Darksaber and he's cutting up a pig straight down in half in that episode. Quite literally, it was a fantastically shown scene. I don't think I needed Yor to get his neck snapped on screen.
That was intense.
Now, normally I'm all for, like, I'm like, oh, look at that. But, like, the way we lost the 8-pack on the show. I
Mm.
just didn't care for. I don't know.
Well, and Jackie turning into a 3-hole punch.
Yeah, I guess did he unignite, ignite, unignite, ignite?
No.
Or did he
So
just
so
do
he
that?
had no. So he had the saber. He snapped it into two,
Yeah.
and it became two like Shoto blades. And he blocked with one,
Correct.
and he went pop pop pop.
And he just went pop, pop, pop.
I think he went pop pop pop. Now I didn't go back and rewatch it, but it looked like he blocked kind of up
Yeah,
with the one,
no, he definitely had one that blocked her
and then
one saber,
and then basically
just
came in
through.
and just came through and pop pop pop, quick succession. So which
Yeah, that was sad because I enjoyed. I think Jackie held her own,
well,
which was interesting to
certainly,
see.
yeah.
Got to see some dual wielding, which was cool. And even Soul, like when Jackie got killed, like he was like she was just a child, dude. She hung in harder than anybody else that you brought. So,
But Chimera is quick to point out that Soul brought her, right? And it's one of those.
it's your fault you brought her.
It's your fault. And I will say, and for episode 5, that the dialogue between Chimera and Soul about, we are what you would call Sith, which makes me think that he's not like a true Sith, right? Like he's a follower, but he could still be a Sith apprentice to a larger Sith Lord. But talking about, wanting freedom to be them, who they want to be, which kind of goes back to the girls and them having the freedom to be who they are, right? And not have their skills suppressed or changed or what have you. And so there's this element of like freedom or lack of freedom, I think, that is kind of permeating throughout the story, which is, an important sort of subplot or sub-message, if you will. But the method in which he dispatches the Jedi is very, well, it's very much what you would expect from a Sith, from a true Sith. He says, now that you've seen my face, I have to kill everyone, right? And it makes me think of, the Bane novels and stuff like that, right? With Bane and Xana, who was his apprentice, and there was I forget where in the story, but they're discovered, or so and so's seen your face. He has to, that individual has to die, and sure enough, Bane goes back and he takes care of things. He slaughters an entire family in the book in front of a father, and you're just like, oh my God, this is terrible. You're the worst evil human. And so we see it on display in episode 5, and I think that was, from that perspective, it was well done. So yeah, and the other thing, one last thing too about the fight scenes, which I did think the Soul and Jackie and May fight scenes were really good. The cannon fodder Jedi fights were just laughably terrible. Even Yord's fight was really pitiful, quite frankly. I wish he would have gotten a bit more. But perhaps the irony with Yord is that he was so,
stoic,
arrogant, or what have you, and he was just dispatched with
I mean, he even said it
effort.
like he's like he fights like he doesn't fight with well, not, I wouldn't say honor, but he didn't fight. What did he say? He doesn't fight with traditional
methods,
combat. Oh yeah, like in combat engagement, like it's
Yeah.
not traditional, and so they like he's like, we don't know how to handle that. Like what do you do? What do I put my hands? I don't know. So that was interesting that he was just like, that's why it, like he was destroyed. Like he's too good.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't do things our way, so we don't know how to handle him.
Well, and he also possessed these super powerful gauntlets that would just deactivate lightsabers.
Yeah,
which was cool.
I was confused on how that exactly worked, so I wanted to know what your thoughts
I know how it works. So, or I believe I know how it works. And this was the thing that came up when I was on the Twitterverse after the episode, going back and forth with a couple different folks. And because I was like, how the heck is that happening? And somebody shared a wiki link with me, which is about cortosis, which is a mineral that is mined that can be woven into things, including gauntlets, armor. Gauntlets are armor. Weapons, even. And in Legends, it's very prevalent. In canon, there's very little discussion of it. Thrawn, I think in the Thrawn comics, or Thrawn Alliances, I think, is the only mention of it in canon. But it had the power to deactivate lightsabers. And the cool thing about cortosis, or the cool thing about the connection to cortosis, is that it is the mineral that Bane was forced to mine at the beginning of the Bane novels. And so it would be a very poetic tie-in to Darth Bane that Chimere would have equipment that was forged or made containing cortosis. Because that was I mean, that's one way to make a fight more fair. You just start deactivating your opponent's weapons off parries. And it was similar. It reminded me too of a fight style that would be similar to Xana, again from the same trilogy of books, because her fight style was much more speed oriented and parry oriented, which is how I think it appeared Chimere fought. It was less brute strength and more athletic, if you will. And Xana was also the one who was good at Source Sith magic, and was able to cloak herself to hide her aura enough so that she could infiltrate the temple and act as a Jedi for multiple weeks during a mission. So I think there's a lot of tiebacks from this episode to Bane and Xana and that lineage. And so if it turns out that he is a true Sith apprentice, it would not surprise me if he's coming from the Bane line. I mean, he would have to come from the Bane line, pretty much. Yeah, so episode 5, definitely some things that I was like, huh, what's going on? But definitely some cool nuggets, too. So what did you think of 5 overall, if you want to give your rating? Remember, this is out of 10.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 7, which I think will probably be about double what the internet gives it. I think the reveal was weak because I shouldn't be right. I'm never freaking right, and I was right, so that was a little disappointing. But at the same time, I don't know. I mean, it would have had to be somebody that we didn't know if it wasn't him at that point.
Right.
So outside of that, the lightsaber, the choreographed stuff it looked good. I mean, like you said, Jackie and May going through it.
Soul and Chimere.
The main fight between Soul and Chimere. I mean, it was choreographed well. I thought it was strong. It showed that they knew what they were doing. Didn't like that Soul gave him a pass because he's like, I can't harm an unarmed. I'm like, he was just armed. You disarmed him, so like, don't just back away from him. Do something. They only brought one pair of cuffs, I guess. Wasted on May. Like, I just don't understand. I don't.
You think binders would have held Chimere? Yeah, come on. No handcuffs. I mean, yeah, that wasn't going to happen.
I mean, maybe they're force sensitive. Maybe they're anti-force ones. I mean,
there you go.
They're holding May. They held May.
Yeah, that was the thing with Soul. Like, it's one thing that Bane and the Sith in general always pointed out was the weakness of the Jedi, and in that regard, right, in the way that they handled certain things, right? And Chimere even says that you can't break rules if you don't follow them in the first place. And
yep.
Yeah, I mean, and we didn't talk about the old switcheroo at the end with the twins, but I should have seen that one coming. I should have seen that coming.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting that that's the way they went with it, but that's why I think we're going to get the flashback next episode, because now they're together.
Yeah, I just
May and Soul.
I don't know what. So like, is Chimere gonna? I don't know. I guess it leads
because
into
at the end of episode 2, you have Osha and Soul getting together. So this episode is Now it's May and Seoul, so I think that's why we're gonna get the next piece of the flashback.
Yeah, but I wonder to what end. Like, what is, and we can talk about it here in a second. But yeah, I mean,
Because she said she didn't want to kill him because her sister was alive, so she didn't need to do it anymore.
Yeah,
so I'm not really sure why.
But now she just bailed and left her sister
Right.
to Chimere. So clearly, there's no love lost there. I just don't, unless she's gonna
Well,
reveal
did tell
herself.
her that she was gonna arrest her.
Well,
so like it was.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what she wanted anyways. That's what May went to do. She was going to turn herself into the Jedi. So it's like now all of a sudden, now that Chimere's gone, except he's not, because he was left to be destroyed by moths. Like, come on. Like, I don't, that was dumb too. Like,
one quick saber throw could have ended it.
Yeah, and like you're telling me that you couldn't like force remove a flashlight from your back. So yeah, for that I would probably give it like a 6 or 6. I would have given it like a 6 or 6.5. The internet thus far hates it again. It is currently sitting.
I can't believe he can.
Oh, okay.
You can't believe he can break lightsabers.
It's gotten better. It was originally 3.7 after 145 reviews. There are now over 1,000 reviews. It came out 3 hours ago, and there's 1,000 ratings on it already on IMDb. 6.7 out of 10. It is currently the highest rated episode of the season.
Yeah.
Which is not.
Which I think it should be. I truthfully think it should be. There's no reason why it's not the highest rated one. It's easily the best episode so far. Like I said, the stuff that I liked. The stuff that I didn't like. It was just more because of. I mean, let's face it. You watched the Jedi kebab, and then they got beheaded behind the tree, but it was okay to show Yor just get his neck snapped right in front of everybody.
Yeah, that was intense. So I don't know where we go from here. I know you're thinking we get flashback next episode. I think I saw something that had the director from episode 3 also directing episode 7. So I'm thinking that episode 7 might be the flashback. So it makes me wonder, what exactly is May planning by accompanying Soul, presumably back to Coruscant, and how on earth does the message of the Sith not make it back to the Council? Like, because again, unless they're going to say that Ki-Adi-Mundi never hears of it, right? And I'm not saying that Ki-Adi-Mundi's like going to be there.
He must not be there. He must be defending the Wookiees on Kashyyyk.
But everyone else is there. And even if you think that he's dead, right, because the moths took him away.
It would be in the records. It would be in the library.
Like, you would have to think somebody has to tell him. Maybe
that's why May is going to Coruscant, so she can delete the records in the Jedi Temple.
I mean, it's possible. It's possible.
Plot hole filled.
There it is.
Sorry, Sean.
You fixed it. You fixed it. So
I've figured it out.
It's one of those where I have no idea where the story is going. Like, I don't know the path. Like, is Chimere going to train Osha now? Is Osha going to realize her ability and she becomes the Acolyte? Is she going to kill May and then kill Chimere and become like not Plagueis's the other Sith Master before Plagueis is I don't. Where are we going? I think that's the thing that's most frustrating, is there doesn't appear to be a clear path. I don't know. What do you think?
So you're thinking that they sequel trilogy it, is that what you're saying?
Wait, in which aspect? In like killing Snoke
so
and
disjointed. We're gonna get something just ridiculous at the end.
But that's what I don't get, because I don't know if there's gonna be a second season. I think there was talks about it and then maybe got canceled or.
I mean, I can't imagine with the way the backlash is hitting right now that Disney goes forward, which is, I mean, I hope by the end of the series currently, I hope that it flips a little bit, but the current trend is not going to get it renewed.
It's not great. So, like, if Osha does get trained by and Keith actually sent an interesting tweet where during that last scene with Chimere over Osha, you can distinctly hear the Kylo Ren theme. The like that one. And it is there. unquestionably. So maybe this is the start of the Knights of Ren type thing, right? Which I think a lot of people speculated at the beginning, but that still doesn't tie up the May Osha subplot, which I thought was the main plot, but I don't know where that plot is anymore, and I don't know I don't know. I'm confused.
I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, and I'm just
I'm trying to think too much about it because I would agree that it doesn't have like that next point right now, like.
And what are the chances that what we just saw in tonight's episode didn't actually happen the way it did?
Well,
like, I don't know if that would make it better or worse, but like, I don't know what's actually happening anymore. Or like we talked about, what is actually real, quote unquote real, with the story, versus what is augmented or completely fictionalized. I have no idea.
Yeah, because I mean, even Yor did say that he gets in your head and he doesn't leave.
Mm-hmm. Which was interesting.
And I guess, and also that helmet block. He's got a Magneto helmet on. He can block. He can block telepathic powers.
Yes. Take the helmet off and let you in my head? No. So I don't know. It's, just to kind of wrap the thoughts on the series so far. As someone who was hugely excited for the series as a High Republic fan, nothing about this show feels High Republic. There's nothing tying it to this. I'm going to say the source material, the source stories. I mean, outside of the tunics and robes and stuff that are worn on Coruscant, you would never know that we're in the High Republic era. The fact that it takes place in the High Republic era is non-important to the story. They completely have forgotten about everything else that they dealt with over the last century and a half, from the Drengir to the Nihil to the Leveler, or the Nameless. They're called the same thing. And it's like, if you were just going to completely forget or not reference or not affiliate to any of the material that already exists, then why even bother saying it takes place in the High Republic? Like it was almost like a ploy.
Sean.
It was almost
Laziness.
a ploy. This could take place 500 years ago, and you would again never know the difference. And that's not necessarily like it's not a bad thing, but when you sell it as this is going to be the first High Republic story, and then not really use anything or tie anything into it, it's kind of, well, like I said,
or even acknowledge that some of the stuff exists. Like,
it's like lazy, and it's I don't know. It's disappointing to say the least. Like, I was so amped for this, and there are 3 episodes left, and it can get better. And I try and always be positive when look at things, but I don't know. I don't see where the story goes over the last 3 episodes to get to a ending that makes sense.
I'm still hopeful because I'm a glutton for punishment. So, I mean, I've tuned into worse shows many times.
Certainly.
So I'm not at the point of where I'm giving up, but I also am not. I was excited to see this episode. I don't know if I carry the same excitement in the next episode, because
we don't know where it's going.
You said it best earlier when you're talking about, like, we should be wanting to know more about May and Osha, and I have not felt that connection yet.
Mm-hmm.
They have not done a good job of connecting their story to the viewer.
Right.
I think they've tried a little, but I'm more interested in learning about Indara than either one of these two, and I only saw her on screen for 10 total minutes. So, like,
well, I'm curious if Soul is. I mean, it almost has to be that Soul is the linchpin. Soul is the one who maybe convinced the Jedi to go into the Coven, right? And I think it has something to do with the fact that, I think it goes back to what he said in episode 3, where he was talking about him being taken away and him not knowing his family. And I feel like for a Jedi, Soul is probably the most emotional, compassionate, like, Force user that, I'm not gonna say Force user, but like Jedi that we've probably ever seen. Like the way that he cares and has so much attachment is so counter to everything that the Jedi teach. And I feel like it's one of those where he's almost like trying to convince himself that he's supposed to be one way, but he realistically wants to be a different way. Kind of like May and Osha, right? With the whole freedom thing, free to do what they want to do thing. So I don't know. I hope they connected because, I wanted to finish on a high note. Or a strong note. Not necessarily a high note. I don't think we're going to get a high note, but something, finish strongly. So
I'm hoping it does.
Fingers crossed. Anything else about the first 5 episodes now of The Acolyte that you want to, final thoughts or anything like that?
I do not.
Okay.
I've given all I've got.
Given her all she's got, Captain. So real quick, plug, myself for sure, potentially John, will be joining the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast this Saturday for their Scarif Live. I'm sure there'll be plenty of episode 5 talk to go around. 7 Central. I'm sure on all of Scarif's social channels. So come hang out with us and them on Saturday night. Should be a good time. So, with that, we want to thank you all for listening. If you've made it this far, be sure to follow or subscribe to the show, leave a rating and review, and link up with us on our social media. Be sure to check the show notes for links to our social channels, and if you have things you'd like to hear in the future episodes, our DMs are there to slide on into. Check our back catalog of episodes where you're sure to find something you'll enjoy, and share us with your friends. Join us, and together we will rule the galaxy. With that, we bring this episode to close. So for Jedi John, I'm Obi Sean, and until next time,
may the Force be with you.
Fool.